Hey guys, Jeremy here from School of Wok, Covent Garden. Here we have my Fakeaway for your takeaway, and this week we've got a great suggestion for another dish for me to make for you guys. Thanks to our Patreon supporters. If you don't know what our Patreon channel is about, it's a monthly subscription where you get exclusive content and great prize giveaways on a monthly basis, and also fantastic suggestions from you guys as our patrons. Keep those suggestions coming. We want them as obscure as you want or as tasty as you remember. Just keep them coming. Right, let's see what we've got in store for today. We've got a nice message on our Patreon from Jamil Care. Dear Jeremy and the team, I've subscribed to your Patreon site because I'm desperate to eat 2 Hong Kong dishes from the 80s and 90s. Whoa, my era. Although I wasn't cooking in the 80s, I was just born then. I have tried nearly all of your recipes. Oh, thank you. And they've been completely reliable. You know how to make me smile. The first is the most important and suitable challenge for you. There was a restaurant called Churned in Brunswick Centre, WC1. I like how specific this is going. In the 80s and 90s, which was a firm favourite when we all worked at Great Ormond Street. Everyone's favourite dish was amazing. We probably ordered 30 to 40 portions on night shifts. Wow, you eat a lot, Jamil. Okay. It was sweet and sour pork Hong Kong style. You know we like a sweet and sour, but instead of using soggy batter, which I never do, they used to caramelize small pieces of pork and sugar like a toffee apple and then coat it in sesame seeds and a beautiful sauce. Can you recreate this? Best wishes, Jamil. I'm going to try my best, Jamil. We have got other sweet and sour recipes on the channel already, but I'm going to go completely different. But I'm going to go completely different with this one and follow your guidance. Let's see what happens. First things first, I've actually got a spare bit of pork fat, believe it or not. I mean, who has that in their kitchen? But it's from one of our other recipes. And actually, I know my sister, she always has pork fat in the freezer because she loves pork so much. And so I'm going to make some crackling, sort of strands of crackling to place over the top of my crispy pork or my sweet and sour pork. I did this for a restaurant menu a while back and it works an absolute treat. So the way to make a good crackling is actually to blanch your fat first. So get it on a high heat and bring it to a boil. Let it boil for sort of 2-3 minutes and then I'll drain it, cool it, and then we'll finally slice it. So whilst that pork fat is boiling away, you can just set up your wok clock of ingredients. You don't have to put all this stuff in it, but I just feel like it adds flavour to the sauce. And I'm going to go for a more classic Hong Kong sweet and sour sauce from before ketchup got to Hong Kong. So it will still start with your base of vinegar and sugar. But as you said, Jamil, you're looking for more of a caramel or toffee apple sort of coating. So I'm going to go for strands of ginger and then slices of garlic to go with this so that the garlic doesn't cook and burn too quickly. Some spring onion chunks. Along with that, and then a little bit of red onion as well. And red onion, I'm just going to dice. I don't like them too big, just to sort of match the spring onion chunks. And that can go pretty much at the beginning. So there's my little mini wok clock there. And then, now that everything's chopped up and ready, that pork fat should be fine to take out. Now, because I've blanched it already, it should come out almost quite rubbery in texture. And any sort of excess fat or meat that I've got on the underside, I'm just slicing off. And this is absolutely not an essential step of making a sweet and sour Hong Kong style, but I've got the belly skin, so let's not waste it. And then I'm going to go for strips of my pork belly. And the whole idea of sweet and sour, and the reason why it's so Moorish, is because it's got that great crispiness, but with that caramelized sauce. But even with the caramelized sauce, if it's cooked well, the crispiness still prevails. And so adding even more crispiness only makes it better. You need a fair bit of salt on this crackling, and then really massage that around your pieces of crackling. After 30 seconds or so, you'll feel those pieces becoming more wet and glossy on the outside, and really sort of massaging that in, because I want to draw as much moisture out as possible before I whack it in the oven to crisp up. I've got some kitchen towel, and I really want to remove as much of that moisture as I can before we pop them in the oven. I've got my oven on without the fan, so it's like a conventional oven function at 230 degrees C, high heat. It should take about 15 minutes for this to crisp up. And then I'm just going to place these bits forget that. Just going to place these on a tray. Just divvy them out a little so they've got space to breathe and crisp up on their own. All this for a bit of garnish, eh? But it'll be worth the crisp. Straight in to the oven, 230 degrees C for about 10 to 15 minutes. Onto the meat. Now, I've got these pork shoulder steaks, which are great for sweet and sour because they've got the fat or bits of marbling in, but aren't sort of quite as fatty as pork belly. So for me, shoulder steak or even neck fillet works really well. And we're just dicing this up. And the batter, I'm also going to go down the Jamil route, Old Brunswick Centre. I'm actually old enough to know where that is and why it was popular. It was, great restaurants around that part of London. The batter for a classic sweet and sour or home style, you'll see from a lot of the recipes we'll do, it's more like a sort of dry, dusty white corn flour batter. But I'm going to go for more a recipe that I use for what I call my childhood chicken wings in my first book, Chinese Unchopped. And it's an egg white and corn flour recipe. And the egg white just gives it a bit more bind and makes it that much, not just crispier, but almost like sort of clumps of crispiness around the pork. I need to season that up first before I start to make the batter. I've got my chunks of pork shoulder here. I'm just going to season that up with a little bit of salt, white pepper, drizzle of sesame oil, and a pinch of sugar. Give that a good massage around, get all that flavour around your bits of pork. And then, as I say, we're going for an egg white batter, so it's kind of like semi-wet. It's not like a fish and chips batter at all, but it's also not the same as my usual sort of go-to dry corn flour batter. It has corn flour in it, but not as much as I would usually do. So we're going to go for about 3 to 4 tablespoons of corn flour. I'm going to get some water and we'll make it into sort of a paste. So if I just mix the egg white and corn flour, it would be very, very clumpy, but I'm going to add some water to that to create this paste that I'm talking about. And Jamil talked about sesame seeds. I'm going to put sesame seeds into the actual batter to add even more crunch and some extra flavour. So you do have to mix this well, get into that corn flour. Don't let that corn flour sit at the bottom of the bowl like it wants to. And then I've got a mixture of black and white sesame seeds here, which I'm also putting into the batter, so they'll crisp up nicely. You'll get that nutty flavour. Well, you leave some for the end as well. Of course, the seasoning is already in the pork, so now we can start to mix that together. And I've got this sort of quite sticky, wet-ish corn flour batter mix. Now, when we deep fry this, you just got to be careful not to sort of take a whole clump and put it in together, because that will just stick together. So we're going to go sort of one piece at a time, fry these, and then you'll get a really nice, light, but super crispy batter around the outside of that pork. Last thing I'm going to do is I'll make up the sauce. Now, when sweet and sour was invented, they wouldn't have had ketchup. So we're going to go for more of a classic, as Jamil has requested, that sort of caramel sort of sauce. So I'm going to start with brown sugar. I've got, say, 4 tablespoons of brown sugar. And that will create a nice deep caramel colour. Same amount of vinegar. That's rice vinegar. 3, 4. I might put a little bit more in. Give that a good mix. And let that brown sugar melt into the vinegar. I will use a little bit of chicken stock when I'm cooking this, but I want the caramel to form before I add that stock. That's currently just sweet and sour. So I'm going to add a couple of spoons of light soy for some saltiness, and then to deepen the colour, a good amount of dark soy, so about a tablespoon of dark soy. Now that should create a really deep, sort of caramelly brown sweet and sour sauce without any ketchup. My sauce is ready. I've got some chicken stock which I'll use as the sauce is going. My crackling is cooking nicely. I don't want it to go too much longer, but we'll start frying these first. As I say, like, corn flour can sit at the bottom of the bowl, so just give it a mix before you start using or start frying your meat. And then when we are going to sort of put your meat pieces in, it's a little bit tedious, but check that it's hot enough, which I'd usually do with some chopsticks, but my hands are dirty now, so that's hot enough. I'm going to pop the heat up to a high heat now, and then we're going to place these pieces of pork in one by one carefully into the fryer. So you can see I haven't put more than half, or haven't filled my wok more than halfway up with oil, just to be safe. But it's great deep frying in a wok because it's got that much more surface area than a saucepan. And that's why I like working with a wok, not just for stir frying, but for that space, that extra space. So you want to, once you've got your pieces in individually, because it's such a sticky batter this, you do want to sort of separate out any pieces that you think might have stuck together. So just carefully run your tongs or chopsticks through the pieces to separate them out. But you can see how crunchy that batter is going to be. I'm cooking this in a couple of batches because I've got quite a lot of pork here, and you don't want to overfill your oil with your meat, otherwise it just won't cook through, it'll just come out all soggy. Meanwhile, my crackling has come out of the oven, and you can see it's got a nice, delicious. I could just eat a whole bag of that. I won't, because it's very unhealthy. So after 4 or 5 minutes, all these pieces really nicely cooked through. I mean, this amount here is just right for the amount of sauce I've got. I won't waste the rest. I'm going to cook that through for us to snack on. So a little bit of oil around the edge. I'm going to start off with your onions. They literally just need a little charring and separate out. And you can go in with your ginger, garlic, spring onion. All on a high heat here. I'm going to build the heat up now as I would with a normal sweet and sour. Remember, I've got a fair bit of brown sugar in this mix here. Once it's really, really smoking hot, I can pour my sauce around the inside edge of the wok. Smoking hot, pour that sauce around and bring it to a really good, vigorous boil. I want this to caramelize up slightly before I add any more liquid or stock to it. The stock will just mellow out the sweet and sour flavor a little, so it's a bit more sweet, sour, savory and not just sugar. Very important that this is on a really high heat, because I'm going to bring it up again with the chicken stock and then reduce it back down before I add my crispy pork. It's getting quite caramelly now, quite sticky, so I'm going to pour some of that chicken stock around the edge of the wok, bring up all that flavour and then reduce it back down again. Stirring from the middle here just brings it up to the sides of the wok, and you can hear it sizzling around the sides of the wok, which is helping it to caramelise more evenly. But I'm not getting any burnt texture or flakes of burnt caramel because of this constant movement. And you can see now it's got a slightly more dripping consistency, so I'm getting much closer to a point where I can start to add my crispy pork. Crispy pork's going in. Again, as I said, I can't use all of that pork in this amount of sauce, but flick that through a few times and then serve up straight away. And then my sesame seeds right at the end. Don't forget my crispy, crackling, just add a bit more crisp and saltiness. My fakeaway for Jamil's takeaway, my Hong Kong style crispy sweet and sour pork. I'm not going to let it wait. It's too good when it's fresh. The sweetness with that salty or the crispy crackling, it absolutely makes it, and that crunch from both. I love it. Jamil, I hope you love this too. Don't forget, guys, this is one of the dishes suggested by Jamil, one of our patrons on Patreon. Don't forget to subscribe to our Patreon or subscribe to the YouTube channel on Patreon for exclusive videos. You'll love it.